Ladies and gentlemen, before we engage to our discussion, we think that firstly we have to understand about the condition in predominant country. In status quo, in predominant country, everything is currently white culture based. Like for example, if you go to a restaurant, it will use Western style, or for example, the market is using Western system. Moreover, there is a certain extent of racism that still exists in that society, which will lead to discrimination towards the minority that come into that country. Secondly, we have to understand about the first generation immigrant, where most of them haven't really settled in the new country. They don't really have money. They don't really have relatives in the country that they can depend on. So what we are trying to say is actually they haven't really adapted in the new country. Moreover, life is really hard for them as they haven't really adapted in the new place. We say that without the basic working skills and the English proficiency or English knowledge, they will hardly get a job. So our aim is for the first generation immigrant to preserve their minority identity in an ethnic enclave so that they will be able to survive despite being discriminated by the majority. For example, what we mean by ethnic enclave is actually an exclusive minority neighborhood where everyone can express themselves as minority. Like for example, what we can see from Chinatown, where everyone can speak Chinese, where everyone can preserve their Chinese culture and tradition and live the way Chinese people live. So coming to our arguments, firstly we're going to talk about why living in ethnic enclaves is comparatively better for the survivability of the family. And secondly, we're going to talk about why it's really important for us to teach our culture identity to our children. Let's talk about the first argument, why living in ethnic enclaves is comparatively better for the survivability of the family. We believe life is really hard for these newcomers because they don't really have money, they don't really have relatives they can depend on. So when ideally the first generation immigrant really needs help as much as possible when something unexpected happens. Like for example, if they got laid off from their job, or for example, if their business fall due to economic crisis, if they live in ethnic enclaves, of course the family will be able to lend them some money for them. So we believe because of these problems, they are really vulnerable. Moreover, because they are not a full citizen in the new country, they don't have health care to guarantee their health. They are easily laid off by their boss simply because they are different than the majority. So in their side of the house, if they don't live in ethnic enclave, they will most likely be the only neighborhood. They will most likely be the only minority living in their neighborhood. Like for example, if I am an Indonesian living in America, I will only live with only my family. My family will live in white neighborhood, which is I'm the minority in that country. So let's talk about this scenario. Firstly, we're going to talk about the worst case scenario where these people will most likely be discriminated. For example, if you send your children to school, they will be discriminated. Your Chinese children will be seen as different because they don't have white eyes, because their skin is yellow, not like the majority who have white skins and white eyes, for example. Or for people who are discriminated in the workplace because their wages are not paid. Or for example, paid but lower than the average. Or for example, they are laid off by their boss. So it's really a disadvantage for these minorities. Even in the best case scenario, where these people are treated equally, just like any other people, just like the majority, it's really bad. Why? Simply because they don't have the exclusivity that the majority have. The majority have money. The majority have a good starting point. For example, They have good English proficiency that can help them to communicate with each other, communicate in the working place, for example. Which actually these things are not, which actually these things are not, which actually minorities don't have these kind of things. So we believe that in our side of the house, living in ethnic enclaves will give you all those helps that you need. For example, you will live with the people that have same experience with you. You will live with the people who have same problems with you, and these people will most likely understand about how it feels. For example, not to really understand about English, how they communicate with each other because they have different accent, for example, or not to get a job, they get sick, or being discriminated in the society. So we tell you that actually this ethnic enclaves neighborhood will likely to be more sympathized to you, because they will help you when your business fall off. They will lend you money to build a new business. They will help you when your family member got sick, or they will support you when you are being discriminated. Coming to our second argument, why it's really important to teach our culture and identity to our children, is because we believe that in status quo, we believe that the children, which is the second generation immigrant, live a life that's not really much different than their parents. Of course, there's a little bit different, but to some extent, discrimination is still there for them. If they're going to school, they will still be discriminated by their friends because being different. So in the rest of the house, what will happen is actually they tend to forget their parents' culture because we don't expose them enough about our culture. They only know about their parents' culture from the TV or internet. That's why they don't really embrace it. So in our side of the house, we will be able to incorporate our culture as much as possible, because they will live in ethnic enclaves with their Chinese friends or Indian friends, so that they will think, at least, despite being different, they still live with their family, they still live with their community. I believe that's all. Thank you.
You are first generation immigrant in a white country. Life is probably going to be very, very hard for you. You have abandoned everything that you know in your home country. You abandon your home, your family. You only bring a limited amount of money, and you don't have any kind of property or assets in that new country. Probably you speak with a heavy accent that people don't understand what you are saying, that you are not familiar with the way people eat, the way people talk with each other, the way people actually bond with each other. Yeah? Your life is very, very hard, so you have two main interests as a parent and as an immigrant. Number one is the short-term interest that you are able to survive the very next day. That is to say, you are able to put rice in your kids' bowl, and you are able to maintain, to give them a good life. Right? You are able to send them to college, you are able to send them to good school, and you are able to make sure that they will grow to a very fine very fine adult, right? This is your main priority as an immigrant parent, that you survive and give your children a good life. And number two is the long-term interest, that you want in the future that even after you die, they will have a good life in this country. They will become a very, very well-off individuals, and they will have children that they can send to college again and again. In the long term, we will have a strong community. Okay, so number one then. How about the economic survival? Why it's better for them to actually live in ethnic enclave to be well off economically, right? Number one, I think that my Prime Minister have told you a lot of things about why living in an ethnic enclave comes with a lot of safety net to your life. That is to say, you are able to have a lot of neighbors that can help you in case where you need extra money when your kid got sick, or when you need to actually send them to college. Why is this something that is very, very exclusive? This is something that's very exclusive because the exclusive sense of camaraderie of you and your fellow immigrants. That is to say that only immigrants living in another country can actually understand the grievances of not being able to eat exactly because you are very new, not being able to be understood, of being harassed in the street just because you are Chinese, and people are blaming the coronavirus to you, for example. Exactly, these are the kind of grievances that is exclusive only to racial minority in a predominantly white country, right? When you live in their side in a very white neighborhood, all your neighbors doesn't understand your suffering, your grievances. You have no one to actually talk about your grievances. You're going to be very sad. Nobody's going to help you. You're going to live a very miserable life, and probably you are going to fail economically too, right? So, and number two, that within that, living an ethnic enclave comes with an exclusive economic opportunity for you to be able to compete against majority run like companies or businesses, right? That is to say, when you are an ethnic enclave, most of the time this ethnic enclave becomes a singular unit of business, a singular unit of economy. That is to say, all the negotiations that you have, all the competitions that you have against a very big multinational companies is being run by a singular economic entity. That is to say, you are being the Chinatown of New York City or other major cities. These are very famous, and people actually go out of their way to Chinatown when they visit New York City, right? This is exclusive only because you come as a unit. That is to say, you are not alone, that everyone is chipping in their contribution, everyone is chipping in their businesses and their efforts to make Chinatown a very flourish like community in New York City, right? This is the only way for you to be able to compete with the connection, the assets, all the advantages that white people have in America, where their company are more flourishing than you. The only way you can do is to leverage your identity, to use your identity as a selling point and actually sell it to have a better life, to be able to send your children to college. So number two then, what about the long-term interest of our children being able to live sustainably after we die? I think that this is very important because we need to understand that young people are very naive. They think that they are immortal, that they think that they are invincible economically, right? That is to say, they already face very little discrimination right now compared to their parents. Yes, we consider they are no longer being harassed on the street, but what happened to them? These are very subtle discrimination, like college admission rate in America, for example, especially in prestigious colleges like the Ivy League, Harvard and Stanford. You as a South Asian or a Hispanic individuals are very unlikely to be accepted, exactly because it's only 0.2% admission rate for Bangladeshi or Indian, for example. And this means that you are very unlikely to be able to compete with your white colleague, right? That you are going to be harassed to some extent. The racial violence was also still happening in the United States, for example. But this means you need to actually prepare as a young individual. Even if your life is not as hard as your parents, you still need this sense of community. You still need some form of safety net. That is to say, we need to preserve the ethnic enclave. We need to preserve the communal sense that you have with your fellow Chinese friend, right? Why is this something that is exclusive? Because they might say that we can express this anyway, we can teach this to our children anyway. Number one, yes, but it is very limited. That is to say, in a very white neighborhood, there is a limit on how much you can actually express your identity without offending people, without actually going against their comfortability, right? That is to say, you as a Muslim in America, for example, you're not able to use azan, you're not able to actually like pray very loudly because it will disturb your white neighbors and you will be like this, you will be attacked, for example, right? That is to say that there are a lot of things that you cannot express. The Chinese festival, for example, these are very important cultural identity that you cannot express, that you cannot actually teach to your children. Number two, even if in a very tolerable like country, even if you can have the Chinese festival, even if you have all the culture, but then the most important thing here is that you still feel alienated. That is to say, you still feel that you are the odd man out. Even if you can wear cheongsam everywhere in your neighborhood without anyone attacking you, you are still not feeling good because exactly no one else wears cheongsam. You are just being tolerated. You don't actually feel that I'm someone that is worthy. You don't feel that you are someone that is like equal to each other, right? Okay, we propose.